Hi, I'm Joe of Mercy Corps, and I'm going to provide a general overview of how to use the Circle of Value joint problem-solving approach when negotiating for humanitarian access with government officials or non-state armed groups or peer agencies. At the top of the circle, the two elements, communication and relationship, are about the process of negotiation. In the vast majority of your negotiations, there will be ongoing implementation involving your counterpart after you reach a deal. So our general advice is to be soft on the people and firm on the problem. With respect to communication, soft on the people means focusing on good two-way communication, balancing talking with listening, which includes asking open-ended questions to learn about their perspective and demonstrating you understand their view. God gave most of us 2 ears and 1 mouth. Think about that ratio instead of continuously asserting your view, which tends to be unproductive. Two-way communication helps build a strong working relationship. It's best to be what we call unconditionally constructive on the relationship, doing things that are good for the relationship and good for you, whether they reciprocate or not, such as showing respect, acknowledging their view, sharing your goals, giving them the benefit of the doubt while managing your risk, and doing what you say you're going to do. Those relationship moves are likely to lead to positive relationship moves back, and even if they don't, they are likely to enable you to be more effective at influencing your counterpart. So they're unconditionally constructive. The process of building a strong relationship and engaging in effective two-way communication enables you to spend more time inside the circle of value itself, on the elements of interests, options, and legitimacy. Our general advice in an iterative process is to focus first and foremost on interests. Interests are the underlying motivations of the parties in negotiation, goals to achieve, and concerns to address. As humanitarian actors, your core concerns, i.e. interests, are likely things like ensuring the safety of your staff, reaching the most vulnerable populations you're trying to assist, maintaining your operational independence, preserving your impartiality, and adhering to donor requirements and international laws. The true goal in negotiation is to meet your underlying interests as well as possible, and to meet theirs at least acceptably, if not better, so that they'll say yes and want to live up to the agreed terms. So it's important for you to understand their interests, not just your own. Dig beneath positions, such as a stated demand for information on your beneficiaries, and ask yourself why. Why is that important to them? The information may be a way for your counterpart to achieve some other goal that may not yet be clear, such as trying to find out how much their constituents would benefit from your assistance, asserting control, or looking tough. In addition to possible organizational interests, your counterpart, just like you, may have individual interests, such as pleasing their supervisor, saving face, or achieving their performance goals. Identifying their interests makes it easier for you and them to come up with solutions. Discussing interests on both sides of the table will help you and your counterpart explore options or possible pieces of an agreement that could work for both parties, such as plans to brief your counterparts on the results of an assessment. Take advantage of different interests between you and them to explore creative options that are lower cost for you and higher value for them, and others that are lower cost to them and higher value for you. Brainstorming multiple options may help you move out towards the Pareto frontier, where both parties capture as much value as possible from the deal. To select which options make the most sense, focus on standards of legitimacy. Determining what is fair is what we mean by being firm on the problem. Using good external benchmarks, such as international humanitarian law and donor requirements, standard practices within the humanitarian aid sector, such as preserving operational independence and assisting vulnerable populations based on socioeconomic criteria, past practices and precedents, such as last year's agreement on registration or previous commitments to assist IDPs and refugees, and how you work with other government counterparts or non-state armed groups. Think about legitimacy as, how can your counterpart explain to their supervisor that the agreement was fair and that they didn't get taken advantage of? Everyone wants to be treated fairly, so looking for good sources of legitimacy will make you more persuasive and powerful as a negotiator. Our advice is to spend as much time inside the circle, focusing on interests, options, and legitimacy before moving to the bottom of this model, where the last two elements, commitment and alternatives, are fundamentally the two different ways you might meet your interests. If you get to a commitment, it's an option you can both say yes to with enough specificity that each party knows what they have to do and when. If you can't get to a commitment that makes sense, go to your alternatives, things you can do without your counterpart's agreement, such as coming back later, changing the players in the negotiation, or potentially even working in a different geography. The alternative that best satisfies your interests is your BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Choose carefully between committing with your counterpart or going to your BATNA. Remember, the goal of negotiation is not to reach an agreement, but to achieve a good outcome. So say yes only if a commitment with your counterpart would satisfy your interests better than your BATNA would. Otherwise, choose your BATNA. Be careful about bringing up alternatives such as, maybe I should talk to your supervisor, because they are often seen as threats and may elicit counter threats and damage the relationship. But if your alternatives are better than they think, you may want to educate and warn but not threaten them. For example, we may need to bring other parties into this negotiation. I prefer for us to reach an agreement ourselves so that won't be necessary. Whether or not you speak about your alternatives at the table, you still want to identify them well before you ever get to a commitment. Regarding their alternatives, if you think they're overestimating their BATNA, reality test it. For example, how would preventing the distribution of cash transfers to IDPs meet your needs? So that they don't mistakenly walk away to their BATNA when they'd be better off committing to a deal with you. In summary, using the circle of value enables you to achieve better outcomes for yourselves and the vulnerable populations you aim to assist, as well as better relationships with your counterparts.